9 seconds. 9-second delay, friends. 9-second delay. We got 9-second delay. No music at all this time. We're just going to go straight up into it. No ifs and buts. Anything silly like that, we are just going to make sure everything functions. I'm going to turn up the sound for a bit, so it's going to be a little bit of echo. You just want to make sure that okay, so we had some echo, so we're good to go. Everything there is good. Let me close down. I want to close down anything that I don't need to have running. So we're not needing any additional. Enable that. We're good here. We're good here. I do want to make sure that this is up and functioning. Okay. I think we're good on everything right now. So the last little bit I'm setting up before we head out. I just need to make sure I do this so I can make sure my stream doesn't. I can see my own stream. One more quick little check, friends, just to make sure that everything is good to go. I want to make sure that I'm actually being visible on DLive. I had a problem the other day that I wasn't showing up for some reason. I'm going to be at the 3 or 4 mark. I see myself, so we are good to go. I'm just kind of curious. I just also see myself in chatting. And 1. You guys just setting everything. You guys know the trade. You guys know the crazy deal. There I am. Cool. Awesome. Okay. We're all good to go. We shouldn't have too much of a lag. I think I got all that functioning. I am not going to bring my. I'm not bringing my charger today. I don't think I need it. I think we should be set. So how is everybody on this wonderful, beautiful Sunday? Yes, it is Sunday. Me, I'm good. Just did a short little walk. Trying to doing some planning. Those that are interested, doing some planning, figuring out where I'm going to be building some buildings. So I'm going to be doing a hybrid building. So I told everybody I was going to be doing a greenhouse, but I think I'm going to be doing something a little bit more ambitious than a greenhouse. I think I'm going to do some indoor growing, an indoor growing house, and I also think I'm going to add a studio for Lisa, and I will add a classroom space for me. That way we have everything that we need for all of our crazy fun adventures. And I might even put like a little living loft or like hangout loft up top, like an office for zoning purposes, an office. And so I might end up throwing that up on top just to, just reasons. That way, some people want to come and hang out. I got a cool place for them to crash and such. So, other than that, beautiful day. It was windy, like crazy last night. I mean, so windy, it was unbelievable. Yeah, Joe. Yes, when I'm done feeding, I've got to fix the hay tent. But as soon as I'm done fixing the hay tent, yeah, I'm totally game on jumping on and playing. That would be fun. Folks, I might later this evening or later this afternoon, actually, I'll probably be playing some Escapists 2 with my little sister because it's a new game we picked up and it's really fun. So And if anybody out there has a PS4 and would like to play with us, X Dr. Firefly is who I am. And jump on and play some Escapist. It's cheap right now on the PlayStation Store. I think it's like $9 or something. So even if you're not a big gamer and you just want to learn, or you're just looking for some like adults to play video games with, jump on. It'll be fun. So we like to, me and my sis like to play video games with other fun adults that also maybe not the best at video games either. So join us. Enjoy the fun. So, my silly internet's being silly again. My barn camera went down. That's what I see in the bottom corner. So, anyways, enough just little idle chit chat. Yeah, there you go, everybody. She just posted it. $9.17 is what the bundle costs. So, well worth it. Join us on our fun adventures. And we're not making any money off this. We're just trying to let people know of awesome deals and come in and join us on our fun. So let me turn down the radio because it seems loud today. So today on this, we're gonna talk about why I prefer country life over city life. And if my sister stays watching, which I don't know if she will or not, but if she stays watching, she can butt in because she's living in the inner city right now, and she works kind of in the suburb. I guess you could call where she lives is in the suburb, and so she can put her opinion and things of that sort. So here's the thing: I lived in the inner city, I lived in the suburbs, and I live here now in a very rural area. What I like about this rural area, it's a rural agricultural. Yeah, the chicken screen goes up and down, Jill. I don't know. It's something with the way my internet's been acting up. I need to fix that, so yeah, it's just mocking us, Jill. It is absolutely mocking us today, so what was that? Okay, so, there's some perks of living in the city. You're surrounded by a lot of cool stuff. You have a lot of job opportunities. You've got a lot of great things for being around entertainment and food. And if you have a bunch of friends and such, you can have a really good time hanging out with a bunch of your friends and doing some really cool stuff like that. That is one of the perks of being in the city. In the country, most of the time you're gonna be a lot more spread out from your friends, unless you're lucky enough to live in a cool little community where everybody lives together. But that's a little harder than it sounds, and you're a little further away from everything. So everything's going to take longer to get to. You're going to have to do a lot more planning. And jobs, you're going to have to be a lot more creative when it comes to your jobs and things that you're going to have to do with that. So that's really the fundamental two just kind of basis when it comes to your personality and how you're personally going to do things. Now, both places have extreme poverty. Depending on where you live in the city, you can be in the ghetto, and you can be in some extreme crazy poverty, and you can even be in the Appalachian ghetto or even, a rural ghetto where there's just a lot of poverty as well. The big difference between that poverty is the folks have a completely different mindset. So, and I'm only giving experience from Northeastern Ohio and a few other places that I've adventured around. So there could be inner cities, and the way they view poverty could be different depending on where you're at. But inner city poverty has a more hatred for those around them, and they have a disdain for folks that have money, where in the country setting, it's the poverty issue is more of a disdain for the government. And it's even though they're, collecting the check and such like that, it's a really interesting mix. But they have a more disdain for the government, and they're also more angry at that kind of stuff. And they want to be left alone. They don't want anybody to bother them. They just want to be left alone. And they're also, if you're not of like a major cause, they're very skeptical of any type of help. They have this mindset that if you're helping them, you're trying to get over on them and you're trying to exploit them in some way. Which rightfully so, I have that mindset because there is a lot of groups that does some major exploiting. Where in the city, I don't necessarily see the people having that same disdain for the government or for people trying to help. Hey, Strawberry. Hope everything is wonderful with you today. So that's kind of the thing. The other great thing about living in the country is if you are surrounded by poverty, you're only going to be surrounded by a limited number of people. Where if you're living in the inner city and you're surrounded by poverty, there could be a lot more people that are impoverished around you. And when people get angry or when just crazy events happen, when more of that happens, it can draw out a lot more negative aspect people and a lot more of the negative juju and more the negative vibe. It can really, really affect those, how it can just keep, it's a buildup. How about that? It's like a rock rolling down. As more people get angry and more people get built up and more people get annoyed, it just keeps annoying each other, and you can have kind of some outbursts. Like, that's why you notice that you rarely see like protests in the country, but you always see them going to cities and, breaking city stuff and attacking city buildings and such. You don't normally see someone going after a farm. So my sister just said she lives in the city, but she wants people to be left alone. And that's because what you don't realize is if you have that mindset, you're really probably not a city person. You really want to live in the country, and you just want the technology to bring you all of the awesome stuff you're used to having. And I don't think we're very far away from that. Like, I don't necessarily like the company Amazon, but thank goodness that they exist, because sometimes it's the only way I can get some of the stuff. So it's another thing you have to get used to. Being in the country, things that you're used to seeing every day and things that you might be used to getting are rarer and harder to come by. Doesn't mean it's impossible. I didn't say impossible. I said rarer and harder to come by. And sometimes that's a good thing, because then you don't waste your money and you don't buy silly things that you might not absolutely need. Where when you're in a city or a suburb area, it's just easy to be like, I'm just going to pick that up because, it's here and I really like it. It's really cool. So, the other thing is, one of my favorites, especially living like here where I live, going for a walk. I used to love going for walks. Go for a walk in the inner city, you just walk around the block. What I call walking around the block here is walking up to my field and then down the road, and cooler is I don't actually even leave my property. So you've walked to go get some water, you've been on my walk around the block. And it's funny, I still use that term because I still got a lot of city. There's still a lot of city kid in me, even though at this particular point, country life is winning out over the other places that I've lived in life, being that I've been here for 15 years now. But yeah, that's a huge perk. The other thing is the rules. I don't really have rules, or if I do, I make them up, or they're really rational, make sense rules. I mean, every place, like, I grew up in Northeastern Ohio. That's where my sister's talking about, where she lives now. Actually, she lives in the house I grew up, one of the houses I grew up in. And it's great. There's parts of Northeastern Ohio I really like. But, she has to worry about being jumped when she walks around the neighborhood, or she has to worry about she hears gunshots and such like that every once in a while. When I hear gunshots down here, I just know someone is either hunting, shooting some varmint, or just getting their gun ready for hunting season. It's not because there's any crime or anything insane happening. It's, there's a rational reason. And I love that. I know I'm speaking to the choir for many of you, because most of you want to move out to the country, and most of you want to live a lot more of a rural life. I get it. And that's why I'm just I'm bringing some stuff up that I've not paid that close attention to, or maybe I didn't think about when I just jumped from the suburbs to here to the country. It's just how it goes. We all make different decisions, and it's always interesting. So I'm just giving some advice. Here's Lisa broadcasting some popcorn, giving some popcorn to all the chickens. And if you want to see the big flock of chickens following right behind, or flock of ducks following right behind her, super excited that she's giving everybody popcorn. She's the popcorn princess.
I just heard popcorn queen on something today.
Yeah, popcorn queen didn't sound as good as popcorn princess. I think the P's make it sound better together. And not balcony. The kind of princess that decides they want to leave, Buckingham Palace and move back to Canada. Oh, hey, why do you have this in here? I left my cup in there. That's interesting. See, I left that in the bunny barn, this little bunny house. I didn't realize I did that. So today, I'm actually going to go in and we're actually going to feed a little bit of the chickens, because I've been pointed out to a lot of people, keep pointing out that my show is called Let's Feed the Chickens, but we rarely go in and actually feed the chickens. So I was trying to get a heads up. Okay, that's funny, Jill. So Jill said that you're a PP.
See, that went through my head too when I was thinking of initials, and I'm like
silly initials. Here, we'll walk.
Sylvia, I'm done sharing this.
We'll walk over because Sylvia likes her popcorn too.
Hey, that's what we were looking for.
Yeah, I know. It just blew up. It just blew out into there.
Oh, whatever. Hi, Sylvia. Aw, I don't want chocolate-covered popcorn.
You're probably gonna have to walk that way a little bit. You can walk on top of that. That should hold you. Yeah. Hey, Mark, how are you? Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for the ice cream. We are right now. Lisa's trying not to fall into the pig pen while she feeds Sylvia popcorn. So it's lots of entertaining stuff here today. So Sylvia gets her a popcorn shower.
Keep it from getting all muddy.
Yes, we make our pig popcorn.
I don't like when she steps forward and she smashes a bunch down into the ground.
No, that's okay. She's just flavoring it. Do you need help?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's Sylvia, our pig. She's 600 pounds. She's about 7 years old. She's a white pig, or I think that's called a Yorkshire cross. She's some type of Yorkshire, Hampshire cross or something of that sort. I don't know. Most people down here just call her a white pig. She was a rescue pig. She came running off the mountain. Someone abandoned her, because that's what people do down here is when they don't want animals anymore, they just release them. Usually in my yard, because we've had horses and pigs and ducks and dogs and cats and parakeets and yeah. So next thing I'm asking people is, if you want to release an animal here, we would really like some sheep. So if you're tired of your sheep and you just want to drop your sheep off someplace, sheep is next. Baby sheep. Well, actually, yeah, baby sheep would be ideal. Baby sheep's what we're really looking for, but that's our next animal. We're hoping someone decides they're just gonna, drop off and leave here. And when I say drop off and leave, like, I literally mean drop off and leave, like in the middle of the night, and there's just another animal running around in our yard or area. It's really interesting. So over time, I think I've had 3 horses dropped off. So the first 2 I found homes for. The last one I kept. Well, actually, I should be fair. That last horse was kind of a drop-off / trade. The person needed to get rid of the horse. They dropped it off, but I knew they were going to, and so I gave them some hay, kind of just so it felt like more like a trade than they were just like abandoning a horse on me. So back to what we were just on. I'm going to give all the bunnies some water. That's why we're back in here. So the perks of, other big perks of being in the country is, I'll be honest, you don't actually waste money on silly things. I mean, I guess you could if you could get caught up on buying stuff like mail order, or you got stuck on the TV, or maybe stuck on Amazon buying stuff, you could waste a lot of money. But because you don't go out in town that often, you don't, waste a whole lot of money. Because you make you're thinking about making smarter decisions. The other thing is you can grow a lot of your own stuff. Even if you don't know how, you can start learning how to grow your own food. And that's a good way you can get through steps. You also can have things that you could not have in the city. Like, I would not be able to have all these ducks or all these chickens or a 600-pound pig if I lived in the city. But you can do that here. Now, you might be able to have chickens in the city, and you might be able to have bees in the city, and you could probably have a couple bunnies or something. And so there are some definitely urban homesteading tricks that you can do. But also perks, if you pay attention to the country area you live in, your zoning is probably going to be very minimal. And there's reasons for that, because there is no reason to put all the rules in place that you would have in the city, because even if you do something, horrible or half-ass or, that's mildly dangerous, it's pretty much only going to affect you, and it's not really going to affect those around. No, Jill, the kale should come back. Kale loves winter, and with you guys, and actually how miles it's been too, that kale should come back, and if you, it might actually turn to seed, like if you leave it there till probably, I don't know when kale seeds. I don't know if it's in the fall or in the spring. But you might be able to get some good, and if it does seed, you should save those seeds, because that means that kale is really, really good for your particular area. And again, I'll remind everyone again, if you guys zip me off an email, I've mentioned this before, if you zip me off an email, xdrfirefly@gmail.com, and you would like some seeds, I think I'll be sending out, I was looking online, I think based on seeds and such, I think I'll be sending out all the seeds at probably the end of February, because then I can get some access. The reason I'm saying all the way till the end of February is I'll be able to make it to the seed library, so if there's anything in particular that someone's looking for, I'll be able to snag it out of the seed library and share it with you guys, because there's some pretty cool heirloom seeds and some pretty cool locally grown stuff around here that might not be able to be got on other places. So I'll just I'll mail you some. I'll put together, give me some information, and I'll mail you some seeds, and it'll be awesome. And then if you have good luck with that and they go to seed, then you can mail me back some seeds, and I can take them back to the library and talk about how awesome it was that we grew seeds and we're getting them propagated all over the world. The other thing I love about living in the country is, as backwards as the people are, they're also a lot of fun. If you've never spent time, and a lot of these city folks maybe have never done this, if you've never spent time with some folks that are just content with having a trailer in the woods and like hanging out and drinking and four-wheeling and just like not really worrying about anything else in the world, there is just something really fun about just hanging out with a bunch of dudes, or people in general. They don't all have to be dudes. A bunch of people hanging out in somebody's backyard with a bonfire and some beers and just joking around, or hanging out down by the river, going fishing. Just, man, is it fun. And it's simple. And they don't have the same complaints or they don't say the same things that folks in the cities say, or even the suburbs. So that's one of the other perks. People are genuinely a little bit happier here than inner city folks, and definitely happier in suburbs than people in the burbs. Because I've noticed that people in the suburbs, they're probably the most miserable out of all the folks that I chit chat with and that we talk about stuff with. And because we lived in the burbs, and we had an awesome place in the burbs too, man. We had like 2.5 acres, had a pond, but I had my friends that lived in like crazy allotments. So my mine and Jill's suburbs upbringing was nothing like those that are living in, gated communities or communities with HOAs or anything like that. So, and I still don't like the suburbs, even though I had a good suburb upbringing. So that should definitely say something. Suburb people are just nosy and boring and just, I don't know. They're just not very fun. So we can go talk. Lisa can explain a little bit more about. She lived in the suburb. She lived in a variety of suburbs in some bigger cities, like in North Carolina and then Marietta, Georgia. And so she's got some suburb stories we can ask her about, because she definitely had a different upbringing than I did. Now, her grandma was a tobacco farmer, or a tobacco migrant farmer. So we were talking today about suburbs, and you were absolutely a suburb kid because you grew up in the suburbs of places like Georgia and such. What was one of the things that you disliked the most about the suburbs? Muddy face. Like, why wouldn't you move back to the suburbs? Okay, so Lisa said she had a lot of fun growing up in the suburbs. And was it because he had all the kids and things of that sort? Okay. And I will admit that was part of the charm of why I liked living where we lived. But the thing is we had 2.5 acres, so all the kids in our suburbs came and actually hung out at our house, and we had all the fun things. Lisa had places where you guys had like public pools and
latchkey in the neighborhood that wasn't predominantly latchkey.
Okay.
So we had the house a lot of people came to.
Okay, so
in our house, the backyard went all the way down. You jump across a little dip, and then you're at the playground, tennis court, swimming. So it was a cut through us.
Okay, so her neighborhood had the ones with the playgrounds and the pools and the fun little activities and such like that. Plus, she was a latchkey kid, so we all know about the latchkey kids' houses. That's where the trouble happened. Well, you might not have got in trouble, but other people did. But I'd be honest, I don't know. Now with technology and with our phones and with everything like that, I'm just not even sure that the suburb life would feel the same. I mean, we're gonna find out.
It doesn't, because watching you in the suburb and watching around, a lot of people have little babies in there.
Yeah.
I mean, not with that neighborhood, but you don't see kids running around playing and stuff. Why they're out and about.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting. Lisa's nephew is moving to a designed suburb community that's kind of designed for families and such like that. So it'll be real interesting to get some information about that and as she can observe and see what it's like. Like she was saying, where they live right now, where they lived just like kind of right now, is when she walked around the neighborhoods, I didn't see a lot of kids out playing, and
The neighborhood feels like a bunch of eyes are peeking out.
a bunch of eyes are watching you. Okay, so, that's, again, like I said, one of the biggest downfalls that I didn't like in the suburbs is you had a lot of nosy folks, but they didn't really participate in what was going on. So, now, in the country, you absolutely have tons of nosy people as well, and there's a whole lot of nosy people. The difference is these are the kind of nosy people that will call you up or show up at your house and like, did you know that so-and-so was out in your yard yesterday? Or did you know your dog got in the trash and it pulled the trash all the way across the road, and then it took that another can and it carried that can over there, and did you know that it ate that burrito that was in that trash? And they've got this level of detail which is just insane. So yeah, no, exactly. And so, it's funny because we have a post office down here, and that's kind of where everybody gets together to check their mail and kind of where all the gossip happens. And you can, here it's a lot of old man gossip, which is really funny if you've never been in a community to realize that old men are just as much, probably the worst gossipers ever. They're maybe to scale with teenage girls, but yeah, old men.
Scary movie, yeah. And old Greg. Silly, really.
Yeah, and so old men
they can't control their emotions.
But again, though, it's not a catty. It's just a gossipy, and it's actually kind of fun. And again, like I said, in the country, they're not mad at you. They just know way more about your life than you have any idea. So I used to have a webcam that actually pointed out into the post office when I used to when I ran my business, so I could see who was pulling in my driveway so I knew if guests were coming or not. Well, I also put that webcam open to the public so anybody could get on there and watch it. Well, I would have old ladies call me, or people like that would have access to that webcam going, did you see that so-and-so was down at the post office for like 2 hours? Their car was there. I wonder what they were doing. And it was so funny. Now, you weren't here during any of that time, were you, Lisa? The camera would go down, and I'd have the old lady that lived across the street.
I remember seeing
Yeah, would talk about how she would call me and let me know the camera's down because she couldn't see who was going to the post office. So that's the kind of stuff. It's more of a close-knit neighborhood. It's more of a close-knit type community instead of that whole like anger or hatred. I mean, the other cool thing is it's also one of those things like if somebody's snooping around your house or something, you've got neighbors that are absolutely watching, knowing exactly what's going on. And maybe you have that in the city. Jill, if you're still here, does your neighbors know what's going on at your house? I mean, I think you mentioned something the other day that some crazy stuff was going on and you didn't, and such like that. So, and again, if you live in a good neighborhood where you know everybody and it's just a tight-knit neighborhood, that's spectacular. But if you're living in one of those neighborhoods that, life is just not bueno, I would say that my advice to you is figure out how to move. Do whatever it takes because community is what's most important in life. So, because you're always, you have your family, but being able to extend that bubble a little bit and having people that have different ideas and you can chit-chat with them and having other people that's got your back and just people that you can turn to and a different group of friends. Because community friends, like neighbor friends, are a little different than like work friends or like high school friends and such. So, the downfall in the country, like where we're sitting in right now, most of the houses around us now are vacation rental, so our community got a lot smaller. Okay, so like my sister just said, she knows when a package gets delivered to her back door. So, and she's got a couple neighbors that are pay a lot of attention to what's going on. So again, there's, as I like to put out, there's actually rednecks and old country people in a lot of places. It's just we've got all forced into living into suburbs or cities, and I don't think it's good for us as a people. It's that next step past like being a debt slave you're a debt slave to your debt that they put you involved. Then you're a slave to keep your job and make sure you keep working that same job even if they're not treating you properly. And then you get this idea, well, I got to stay in this little tiny community where, I've got asphalt in front of me and I live in a tiny little ticky-tack box. And it's just they keep cranking it down a little bit. I mean, we're seeing it even now. They've cranking down the freedom of the internet. Where they're trying to narrow it down to what we're allowed to talk about and who's allowed to post on which stuff. So they just keep kind of turning the screws and seeing how much we'll put up with. And the best way to undo those screws a little bit is start a community, move into a rural area, grow your own food, make a little bit of your own power, trade skills with folks around you. Thanks for the diamond, thanks for the lemon, Great Alaska.
It's called empowering yourself.
So, you got to empower yourself. First, you do have to empower yourself. You have to make sure that you are an awesome version of yourself, and then you focus on your family and your immediate friends next, and try to make them as awesome as possible. And then you focus on your community, and you give back to your community, and you be the key person to make your community continuously improve until your community is one of those awesome places that everybody wants to live because it's just really fun. And that sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's a lot simpler than it sounds. It's just enough of us have to do it together in a small setting. And we can solve a lot of awesome stuff. And again, I'm saying this because I think it's easier in a small town or rural town in the country. And I do consider some small towns country towns. So you could be living in a small little community, and the community maybe has a farm or other stuff right on the outskirts of that, and that still to me is in the country in a small setting, even if you may only have a posted stamp yard. It's still that rural city. And here in Appalachia, we are absolutely full of rural cities. I've pointed this out before, but if you guys are really into city life and you want to still also kind of be out in the country a little bit, some cities down here, Bluefield and Princeton, are places that you might look at because the cost of living is really cheap. There's a handful of okay jobs because there's always a demand for jobs because there's not a lot of people that work around. There's not a lot of people that have the ability to work a lot of these jobs. We don't usually get an influx of new folks. And the cost of living and being able to buy a house or rent some property is fairly cheap. And you're going to get a lot of the stuff that you're going to have in the city. Now, you're not going to have some of the bigger stuff. Like, the downfall is you're not going to see a lot of, if you're into concerts or stuff like that, they're not really going to come here. But we are seeing the diversity in food and such, which I was surprised. Like, we have sushi restaurants now, and that's something I honestly thought was going to take a long time. Because when I first moved down here in 2005, I went to one of the small towns and I asked if there's any sushi restaurants around. The people pointed me to the lake and told me that there's fish in the lake and I could go there. And so, like, with that mindset and such, I never thought that when the sushi restaurant opened up about 5 years later, I just never thought that it was going to be big. But surprisingly, they did a balance between sushi and hibachi grills, and that was enough to make people stick it out and keep it interesting down here. So. But again, that's a town that I got to drive about 35 minutes away to get to. But then I point out my friends that live in places like Atlanta and such, where their hour commute and their commute is just sitting in traffic and such like that. So at least I get to be driving my car and enjoying that 30-minute drive instead of be sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. So that is something that is definitely a bigger plus than a minus. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. If you really are thinking about moving to the country, or really thinking about homesteading, or you're really thinking about just getting out from where you live, that's why you can just, get a hold of me, ask me questions, or ask questions in any of my chats that you see. And I'll be honest, man. I'll tell you the real, because there'll be some shock the first couple weeks that you do it, maybe up to the first month or so, maybe even longer, depending on how embedded into the city you are. There's definitely some shocks. So, I mean, there's some stuff that makes it a little scary too. Like, the hospital in all directions is about 40 minutes away. And in reality, I honestly think I can get there faster than calling 911, getting the medic, picking me up, taking me to the hospital. I think I could drive myself or drive someone there faster than the EMS. Now, the EMS could actually solve an issue, like if they're going to keep you alive, the EMS can do that. And the perk with that, the other thing, though, is being in a small town with that is a lot of the EMS we know because they're citizens or people of our community, and so they actually might even know a little bit about what someone's illness is or a little bit about what they're dealing with before they even reach a scene if they know whose house and such they're going to. So that's again a plus and a minus. There's lots of those when you talk about country life versus city life. So I'm going to go give Sylvia a little bit more food.
I need a little water too.
You need some water? Okay, I'm gonna go get some water and Sylvia some food. That way I don't feel like I'm just sitting here talking to you guys while Lisa's doing all the work. Yeah, it's like 65 or something outside, and it's absolutely awesome and ridiculous all at the same time. So I feel a lot better today. The barometric pressure has finally settled off because yesterday when that storm came through, man, it just was crazy. Oh, for those that I was telling you about how crazy wind it is, I lost 2 ginormous trees way up in my field, which is sad because I had this group of trees that I really liked because each year they would all have a slightly different color to their fall leaves. And now I think I've only got there was 5 trees when I first moved down here and there's about 2 left. So be life though. Once they go, I have some other ideas of what I'm going to actually probably extend my hay field that way a little bit. And those trees were always in the way of that hay field. And the other good thing about them falling is I needed some wood to do a cordwood bee house. So I'll be able to just get the chainsaw out there and saw up a bunch of that wood, and I'll have all the wood I need for the cordwood bee house. So the good thing is there'll be no having to really do major searches or buying. It's 35 there, Joe. Wow, that's chilly. Yeah, it's supposed to be warm here for a couple days. Filling up the water. For those that haven't seen this, I'll show you guys again. I have a cistern, about 30,000 or so gallons underneath here in this ginormous cistern. This is mostly rainwater or spring water that fills this up, and then I use this to fill up the duck stuff. Oh, okay, here we go. Alaska, if you're still here, see if we can see it. I'll zoom in for you. There's a chemtrail that's staying pretty well. That just recently, it's not been a crazy chemtrail day today, but definitely a little bit. Lots of big wispy clouds and such today. I'm surprised though. There must not be a storm or anything going to roll through because we've actually got a pretty nice sky with just a few wispy clouds and such. So usually, if the weather's going to get real bad, my sky starts turning really gray, or it starts turning really super cloudy. It becomes not bueno. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Sneezy face I am. Okay. Spin this around because I got to carry this water to Sylvie, or I got to carry this water to Lisa, and then go feed Sylvia. Piggy. Yeah, the sun, I don't know if you can see, it's just now cresting over. It's just about to go over the mountain. It's only about a few more minutes before we lose the sun over the mountain. Now, it won't get dark for a little while after that, but this time of year, the sun crests the mountain pretty good. And we don't have direct sunlight anymore, so lots of shadowy days. Ugh. There you go, Lisa. Oh, excuse me. Get Sylvia some more food. And that water's flowing out pretty good. Okay. Do not have her food thing in here. So be life. So yeah, that was so what we talked about today is just kind of a recap why I prefer to live in the country instead of the city. People are nicer, more freedom, quieter in general, less rules. Say it one more time, less rules. As you can tell, rules are something I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. Some cons, you're farther away from everything. It's harder to make a living. Services that you may be used to aren't quite as prevalent as they are in a city. But all in all, it's a nice place. And I would suggest, though, if you have kids, you want to raise your kids in the country. If you're going to send your kids to private school, or if you're going to send your kids to public schools, at least in a country public school, they're going to learn some skills, and they're going to learn from other country kids some real life stuff, even if the school isn't that good. Like, I'll give a great example. One of my friends was just talking about the other night when we were chit-chatting that when they grew up and they lived in kind of a city setting, they were told not to learn math and don't count on your hands, and that counting on your hands is bad and things of that sort. Where when they raised their kid in more of a country setting, the school's like, sure, count on your hands, man. You're always gonna have 10 fingers with you. So if that helps you do math and that helps you as a walking calculator, you should totally take advantage of that. And that's a really interesting, practical way to look at things, and I think that's pretty cool. So there's things of that, or like down here, the kids, they may not be just as book smart as in some other places, but you could probably go off and ask half these kids how to field dress a deer, and by the age of like 13 or 14, boys and girls know how to do it. So, and why is that useful? Because there might be times that you have to prepare other foods or other types of meats and such like that, or if maybe they don't know how to field dress, a lot of the kids are actually going to know where they can find fresh water, or where they can get some herbs or ginseng, stuff like that. Excuse me. So that's the other thing. Like in the city, how many kids do you know that can know what they can eat in the backyard? Which actually, a city is a great place to wildcraft, and there's lots of awesome stuff that's very edible growing in a city. But most folks don't know how to eat it because they just go to McDonald's or stuff like that. I was actually thinking about that. I was watching last night the Ugly Jew, which if you're not following him on DLive, make sure you follow the Ugly Jew here on DLive. But he was showing some videos of some people, I don't know, mocking the homeless, or I don't know what the videos were. I jumped in and was only watching partly. So they're talking about there's homeless people in it. And I was thinking to myself, if we could teach some of these homeless people to wildcraft, and maybe even some of these people to do like, transient wild gardens where they would have seeds and they could plant around, and as they're moving around or going from park to park or stuff like that, they could tend to these like gardens and grow their own food, since they're outside anyways, and they're outside, doing the stuff that they're doing. And some of them, a lot of them maybe have a mental illness or something, and being able to focus on a project like that where they're growing some food for everyone, maybe work, setting up fruit forests so that some food's like falling from the sky and such for those. If we just like really kind of focused on something like that, it'd be pretty interesting. There might be some ways that maybe some of these homeless, while that we may never get them to live in a home or a shelter or anything, they could at least offset some of their food by little projects that they're growing themselves, or little projects that groups of them are growing in like community gardens or community space or public space or stuff like that, and then set up places where off of buildings and such, where we can have rain catchment, and the rain catchment goes into a rain barrel, and that rain barrel has a handful of different filtration systems in it, and then that filtration comes out and gives it fresh enough water, because it might not be perfect, it might not be crystal clear perfect water, but in general that's a huge step up from some of the water that they could be possibly drinking and such now. And I think that's kind of an interesting way that we could be dealing with the homeless. I'm going to spend some more time thinking about this, and maybe I'll just do an entire show on some of my ideas on dealing with this, because the more I think about this, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and the more I think about this, I think there is some solutions. And if some of you folks that live in the city want to talk to me about these solutions, I think I can help you out, and I think we can actually make this happen. Anyways, again, that's not the whole purpose of this particular episode, but just kind of I thought I'd bring that up on something different to think about, because I spend a lot of time thinking about a variety of stuff, and I'm always thinking about ways to make things a little bit better for everyone. So, and if you followed me long enough, you realize that I'm not one of these like throw free money at everyone or forgive everybody for mistakes that they made, or do all this stuff. I do think that I'm going to go back to the best phrase I heard. I do think it's important. I think it's important for people to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. But I think it's also vitally important to make sure that people have boots first. Because if you don't have the boot, you can't pull yourself from the bootstraps. You can't take that first step. You can't achieve that next step to feel proud about yourself or to fix something. So that's where we're at. Pull yourself out of your bootstraps, but let's make sure everybody has a pair of boots so that it is possible for them to do that. Well, guys, I'm going to start heading back to the house. So I think that's about everything today in our little fun adventure. Lisa, anything you'd like to add to today's fun conversation? Okay. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is the other fun thing about living in the country. Let's see if I can zoom in right here. Right there is a cool view of, let me take a deep breath so I stop shaking. Right there is a cool view of a bunch of cows on a ridge. Where do I live? We are in southern West Virginia. So I grew up in Akron, Ohio, but I now live in southern West Virginia. If you've ever driven down 77 and you've went through the last toll, and you look up from the last toll and you will see a bunch of cell towers, this is the other side of those cell towers. So all those cell towers you can see from the Interstate 77, that is the other side of the cell tower. So I live just on the other side of those. Oh, like normal, let's take a quick peek at the sky, because I think it's always important to make sure we look at the sky every day. Getting in the habit of looking at the sky every day reconnects you with, helps keep everything, and it helps keep everything in check and balanced and such. So here we are, looking at the beautiful sky. Yeah. Wonderful day. Wonderful day, friend. Awesome wispy clouds. That means it's kind of windy up there. Zipping through. Not too chemtrail laden. Just a beautiful, beautiful day. What'd you say? Yeah. Yeah, we'll go fix that in just a minute. What? What's on that side? I put it up already once, so I'm not super worried about it. I'll probably staple it up again once all the wind goes through. Well, friends, I think it's time to gonna head in. Gonna end this stream soon. We've got to fix another barn. One of our hay barns had some crazy wind kind of blow off our makeshift roofs that we have on them. So we're gonna go address that. Jill, I will be shortly after we get that fixed. I'll come and jump online with you so we can come play The Escapist. And if anybody's on the PlayStation 4 and you guys would like to join us, we're playing The Escapist 2. So you guys, X Dr. Firefly is my PSN name. You're welcome to join us on these fun adventures of video game-ness. And yeah, folks, if you're your first time watching, I do this show every day at 15:30. And it goes on for however long it takes us to feed everyone. And we talk about a variety of subjects, mostly dealing with homesteading, farming, but sometimes we get a little deeper and talk about other fun things. And you're welcome to come along, join us on the journeys, ask questions, and just have a good old time. We've got a really great community here, a lot of fun people that you'll see in the chat throughout the course of the weeks and months. Also going to point out, if you're new to DLive, and if you're not on DLive, you should be on DLive, but if you're new to DLive, there are some other awesome, great channels to watch. There's Lift the Veil. Nathan and the way he covers the news is spectacular. You have The Ugly Jew. He usually, every night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, he does some news and some just hanging out, and we also play some games and such on there. Great channel. Sometimes in the later evenings, you'll see the Infinite Plane Society. That is another fun channel if you want to really just get in and use an auto hoaxer and just get in and get some really good news and such like that. So those are my 3 main suggestions on who I would suggest listening to and such. Other than that, friends, it's the Baron. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. Till tomorrow.